the wild monks
Mm-hmm.
of Ireland.
If I had to pick between a desert and the forest, I'm picking the forest to be a
Yeah.
monastic. So
Yeah, I would much rather be in the greenscape rather than looking for water.
well, again, wherever God calls you. But like, I hope God calls us if we were to be in the monastic hermitage life, it'd be a nice forest with a nice cave with a beautiful lake in front of us, like St. Kevin.
And welcome to the Barrel-Aged Faith. I got my buddy Nikki back on the show. We have missed him because he's been jumping around the world. Went back to Ireland again.
Mm-hmm.
Now you're at Duke
I'm at
studying
Duke.
to get your third master's degree in
Yep,
theology.
master's in theological studies. But yeah, I've been bouncing around all over the globe. Been very much privileged and blessed by God to be able to do that. I went to Greece, specifically Athens and Patmos, and then I went back to Ireland and in Scotland. So yeah,
You
traveled
went to
all around.
Patmos and where else?
And Athens. So
Oh, good. That's
yeah,
awesome.
yeah.
And then what's the big news? What's the big announcement?
I am engaged.
All right. That is awesome.
And we'll talk about that more later, obviously.
Yeah.
But
You'll have to tell us the story because in
Mhm.
today's episode, we're going to be talking about Irish saints, your trip to Ireland, connecting it to even Adam. So according to St. Ephrem, Adam is like actually luminous. Like his own being is luminous, and he compares him to Moses coming down from the mountain.
Really?
To the point where when the animals are coming to Adam to Eden, so they're coming out from parts of the world, and they're coming to him. This is very mythos. But they won't even look at him. They have to like keep their head down because he's so luminous and angelic like. And when he falls from grace, he loses that.
Yeah.
And he loses his connection to creation, which is why he becomes under captivity and won't be freed until the return of Christ. Romans chapter 8. When you get to the Irish saints, and you just got back from Ireland, someone like St. Kevin demonstrates this kind of connection where he's in otters bringing him like fish every day and bringing his monastery fish every day, and these trees are like living and being in this one forest and recognizing who he is. And there's times where he's even luminous, like Adam.
You have the story of St. Kevin with the blackbird where he's praying with his arms wide, like, cross, and the bird builds a nest in his hand. And he's like, well, I'm just going to stay here and pray some more until the birds hatch. I'm not going to mess with them, which is such a great story to show like the harmony that we are supposed to be in creation too. The only Kevin story I knew about St. Kevin was the bird, because that's the most popular one, because you have poets, Irish poets and stuff, making poetry about that and stories about that.
It's kind of part of the Irish folklore is singing about St. Kevin and the blackbird.
Oh yeah. And it's just beautiful just looking at, because I held, I showed you some books, like I got some more books from my trip to Ireland. One like this one is St. Kevin and Glendalough.
Oh,
like a little like booklet, kind of help you with like your pilgrimage there. Unfortunately, I didn't have this booklet when I went to St. Kevin's when I went to Glendalough. And going to Glendalough, Kyle, you need to go.
Yeah, what was it like? Yeah, I'm trying to go, by the way, but
okay. If you ever want to plan a pilgrimage, let me know. I'd love to do that.
Okay.
That's a future thing. Like try to get like a community, like get a community of your subscribers and stuff, and do
barrel-aged Christians, and we'll go to Ireland just to see the Irish saints, make a pilgrimage to those locations.
But yeah, so Glendalough, it means basically, between two lakes. So there's the upper lake and there's the southern lake. Both are beautiful, and it's like in between mountains. It's in a valley. The Wicklow Mountains are just beautiful. Like I only was there for about an hour and a half, and I didn't realize how big it was, because sometimes when I like to do pilgrimages, I don't like looking up every little thing about the site, because I want to leave some mystery, some unknown for me to discover. Like I get an idea, okay, these are the things I have to see, like, oh, I got to see the church, or whatever. But basically, currently, it's a national park in Ireland. So it's huge. It's like miles. And so you arrive, there's some creeks, there's trees. It's so lush and green in the mountains. There's like little waterfall when you're walking on the trail. And yeah, so you first get there, you see like a center That's for the site, because it's a national park,
Mm-hmm.
and it's not free, but the rest of the site is free. So like, if you don't want to go into the building, don't go in the building. But when you go outside, then you see the monastic city. So this is where the monastery was built, and basically it's a giant graveyard at this point, because there's just grave marker after grave marker all around what's left of the monastic ruins. So you got some of the gates, which is very beautiful. You have a cross on where the gate is when you first walk in to remind you that you are entering in a holy area. And of course, this place has been destroyed and rebuilt like dozens of times throughout the centuries. But the round tower is still standing. It's one of the biggest round towers in Ireland. I forget if it's the second or the third. But basically, a round tower, for those who don't know, is basically just a tower that's round. I know, right? But it's supposed to help store things, and also for protection, because the door is like 10 feet, like 5-6 feet off the ground. And so, or more than that. And you climb up the ladder. So when the Vikings come and raid, or when whatever pillaging group comes to raid your monastery, because at that time, the monasteries had a lot of money and golden objects and relics and stuff to plunder. And they're not defended because they're monasteries, they're monastics. They're not going to hold a sword up. So when they raid,
a perfect scenario, no defenses and lots of treasures.
Exactly. So then you like, it's for seeing. So like, a bell gets rung at the top of the tower. Everybody runs to the tower, grabbing everything they can, grabbing food, grabbing the holy relics and stuff like that. You bring up the ladder, shut the door, and you just stay in there, and hopefully they don't break down the door, basically, and sometimes there's like little windows above the door where people can throw stuff at the invaders and stuff like that. But basically it was used to protect and store things. So it's a very iconic thing of Irish monasticism, very iconic thing. And of course they have the ruins of the churches there, and St. Kevin's kitchen, St. Kevin's church and stuff like that. So that's like
St. Kevin's kitchen.
It's just
some.
There's just nothing.
Rocks.
It's just no. It's still a church. It looks like a church. It's just there's nothing in it because the Protestant Reformation and the dissolution of a lot of things. It's not an active monastery anymore. It's not an active monastic site. It's ruins, but still holy, because you can still feel the presence of all the saints that came before all the monastics. And like I said, it's a graveyard. It's not an active graveyard anymore, but you have people being buried in the 20th century in this place. You see the ruins of the buildings. And after that, then you have the actual lakes. So you walk up the trail. It's very beautiful for hiking. And you walking past, you pass the Deer Stone, where, according to legend, it's this round little hole. I think that was where they used to grind up, flour and stuff like that. But basically, according to the legend, St. Kevin, somebody left a baby, unweaned baby, on St. Kevin's doorstep. And he's like, well, there's no women here, so what am I going to do, God? So he prays to God, and a female deer comes up, doe, and gives milk to the kid. And like puts milk in the deer stone in like this little hole, like this bowl, and the kid is fed until the kid is old enough to eat solids. So like another miracle there, showing like, again, the harmony between St. Kevin and nature. So then you walk, you see the waters. Of course, there's a legend that there was a monster in the lower lake, and St. Kevin banished him to the upper lake. And then his cell. So there's St. Kevin's cell and there's St. Kevin's bed as well. I didn't get to go to St. Kevin's bed because it was way too far away and I only had so much time. You could spend a whole day there, maybe even more, just walking and just being in the nature, not just the sites itself with the ruins, but just how big the park is and how beautiful it is. Because you just look down the water and it's just out of a book, like out of like Tolkien, basically, how beautiful it is. The cell, what remains of the cell is like some rocks, like he probably had a beehive cell, a small little thing that he probably had some guests and stuff like that. But it's near the upper lake.
Like a beehive cell like you see on like St. Michael's Island?
Yeah, I think, I'm not 100% sure, but like nothing grand, obviously.
Yeah, just rocks that are just built up.
Yeah, but what's left is a couple rocks and there's a tree growing out of it. So, but you can sit there. And so you have to climb up, a little hill, walk up some steps, and it just overlooks the upper lake. And it's a gorgeous view. And I'm like, I don't blame St. Kevin for choosing that spot, because you just see the lake. And of course, according to legend, like the monster, he's watching the monster in the upper lake now because he banished it to that. But yeah, but that's where he would pray. That's where he would receive guests. And then, of course, further on is another cave, like this man-made Bronze Age tomb. This is where traditionally where pilgrims would go, like end their pilgrimage at St. Kevin's would be his St. Kevin's bed. And so that's where
Okay.
they believed him and some other saints would sometimes sleep or retreat to pray. It's stuff like if the cell was too busy and stuff like that. But the cell is a cool thing, like I said, because that's where, you know, he did a lot of her prayers, probably where he held the bird, because they had a statue above it of him, of him and the bird, and then a verse from Seamus, the poet Seamus Haney. Yeah, I think.
Okay.
I pronounced that wrong for sure, but again, just referencing, like, you know, the story of him and the bird. So that's where they think that's where he did
the spot.
that.
Okay,
So
very cool. That's awesome. It seems like there's like this long tradition in Celtic Christianity to really value our place in nature,
yeah,
and even it seems like in the primitive Catholic Church that there were even like outdoor masses were pretty common. Like
oh
that
yeah,
was a preferred thing, partly because in their pagan days it seemed to be that that's how they actually
yeah.
worshipped.
Because again, like, of all of the forms of, like, when Christianity spread, particularly in like the first 1,000 years, a lot, you know, less violent, at least in the first like 600 years. And so Ireland is a prime example of what happens when it is more of an exchange of ideas and not through violence, you know? And again, you see more of a culturation of that. Like, they don't get rid of everything from their pagan Celtic roots. It is transformed and reclaimed and redeemed in the Christian way of thinking. And so, like, you see a lot of blurring of things. Like, for example, Saint Bridget is one of them, because there's the Bridget goddess, but there's also Saint Bridget, the actual person. And you see Saint Bridget, the person, taking on some of the aspects of the goddess Bridget, but and incorporate that into her mythos. And of course, you get the ideas of, like, you know, liminal space, thin places, and holy wells and stuff like that. That's another big thing in Celtic Christianity, is the holy well. So these are wells that saints go to, you know, and like they have healing properties and miracles happened at these wells. You know, it's very, again, like, how the more I meditate this and the more conversations we've had, Kyle, the more it's like the Desert Fathers very much influenced Celtic spirituality. And it feels very Celtic Christianity feels very Eastern, even though it's very Western, though.
I think I mentioned this to you off camera at some other time, but one of the cool things that connects the Desert Fathers in Egypt is when you go to Ireland, you know, they have crosses all over the place,
Mhm.
and Saint Anthony is on them the most.
Yeah.
After our Lord, of course, you've got
Oh
like
yeah.
lots of scenes of
Yeah.
crucifixion and things like that, but after that, like the saints that you see on these crosses, the scholars have studied these. They find Saint Anthony all the
Mhm.
way from Egypt on these crosses in Ireland,
Yep.
which really connects the Desert Fathers and those early monks with Ireland.
So, like, a lot of books that you read about, you know, Celtic spirituality and stuff like that talk about the Celtic Church and how it's like was free from Rome, and Rome was this big bad thing, you know, trying to keep the Celtics down, kind of jazz. Like, you see that in some books. Like, you see this in like this book that I showed you last time, like Celtic Fire.
Mhm.
And of course, that's the biases of people, you know, like, because people have their agenda and stuff. But when I was in Belfast, which is Northern Ireland, which is part of Protestant territory, by the way, you know, where all the Protestants are in Ireland, on the island of Ireland. And I took a picture when I was in the museum, the Belfast Museum. And it was a really cool museum, by the way. Like, the first floor was like art, and then it went down to like natural history and other stuff like that. But I took a picture of this, and it was talking about, can I find my stuff, please? Here we go. The established church, you know, talking about Christianity in Ireland. And they have a sign, and it says, despite the notions of a Celtic church, in quotations, Irish Christianity was Latin and in continuous communication with Rome.
Mhm.
So even though, like, it had its own, you know, what's it called? Flavor of Christianity, it was still in communion with Rome. People were still talking around. It wasn't this big, like, of course, as, like, you know, as the Middle Ages went on, there was the Roman Church, you know, the Pope, and Rome wanted more uniformity and conformity happening throughout its churches
Yeah,
and stuff.
yeah.
But the same point to say, like, oh, it was never in communion with Rome, it never listened to Rome, is ahistorical. and this is of course like, a secular institution. It's not like unbiased, it's Protestant, and it's more like you see kind of more the like the Anglicans and other people trying to be like, oh, we had a church before Rome kind of
Mhm.
jazz, but they were all in communion with Rome. and
And back
there's a
then, it
yeah,
was a little different too. I mean,
yeah.
what it meant to be in communion with each other in the ancient church. Yeah, they were trying to get on the same page with certain things. For
Hmm.
example, like when to
Easter.
celebrate Easter together. That's
Yeah.
that's always the biggest one. So the churches were dealing with that in the 2nd century.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
that was between, Pope Victor and the Asian churches.
Hmm.
But then that doesn't become a major controversy, it seems like, in Ireland till later.
Yeah.
Partly because there just were so, like, fewer Christians in
Hmm.
that part of the world. It was much more dominant in the Middle East,
Yeah.
in the early centuries, and so the what it meant to be in communion with each other was a little bit of a looser definition. It meant
Yeah.
we're holding on to the same Orthodox faith.
Hmm.
We have a valid liturgy, and so they weren't under the
Hmm.
Roman Rite. The
Yeah.
the Gaelic Rite was
Hmm.
dominant throughout Western Europe.
Yeah.
And so it's more of like when Rome and Constantinople and Antioch, all of the major apostolic sees, when they're trying to create more uniformity in their area to fight heresy,
Hmm.
or weird liturgical innovations,
Yeah.
that's when you start seeing the big C's, not just Rome.
Hmm.
Constantinople's doing it too,
Yep.
for sure. Uh, they're all trying to create more liturgical uniformity in
Yeah.
their patriarchate, like their
Yeah.
area. So that's part of the same story of Ireland.
Yeah. And of course, I mean, it's, again, like I said, some people would take that conspiracy kind of jazz, but like I viewed Celtic Ireland more so like the East in that regard because there was a strong tradition of monasticism. Abbots had a lot more influence, and then you see that in the East too, in Eastern
Mhm.
Orthodoxy, like this tension between the bishop and the abbots and the monks,
Oh, for
and
sure.
you see that in Ireland too, and of course, but at the same time, like, and of course, once the church becomes more in communication, as communication like becomes more established, becomes more like you get this uniformity, you see more structure because
Even
the church is so
Benedictine,
big.
yeah, the
Yeah.
Benedictine monastic structure was actually bringing order out of the wild
Hmm.
monasticism that
Yeah.
Saint Kevin embodies, and
Hmm.
so, of course, you can never have too much wild and too much chaos. You gotta have
Yeah.
it always has to be balanced by order. That's how God created the world, like this balance of mystery and adventure and spontaneity with order and structure.
Hmm.
And you see the same thing with the Christian life, and so I
Yeah.
think there's always been these tensions,
Hmm.
between spontaneity and being spirit-filled, like a charismatic, and
Yeah.
yeah.
And so, like, I only bring that up just because that's that prevalent, like, I wouldn't say myth per se, but prevalent, like, idea that, like, oh, Celtic Christianity was a separate thing and it was beautiful. It was beautiful, obviously, beautiful, untouched, and then Rome came along and ruined
Mhm.
everything. Like that's not no. They were Orthodox, they were Catholic, they were in communion, and of course, like they had a little bit more leeway, because that's what it was all in the primitive church. A lot of people who were a little bit more leeway, and then once everyone started like, okay, we're here for the long haul. We need to make sure we're keeping the tradition, stuff like that. Then you start seeing uniformity. You see some things going on the wayside, but still, even in the Irish church today, that's very Catholic, very Roman. You still see the Celtic flavor still coming up, because of the saints, because the stories of the saints, like Saint Kevin's story, and all the saints like Saint Bridget, Saint Patrick, and all the other saints, because Celtic saints are like very beautiful with their stories, and even though they didn't write down a lot, like their stories are just really good ways of learning what the Christian life is supposed to be like.
Yeah.
So,
I think this is the future of Christianity, honestly.
mhm,
I do think that when we look at the Irish saints, the Irish desert fathers, we might,
mhm,
sometimes people call them
yeah,
the green martyrs.
the green
They live
martyrdom.
the green martyrdom where white martyrdom is where you die to your selfishness every day, and red martyrdom was when you actually literally die and shed your blood for Christ. And then I think it may have been Thomas Cahill who coined the term green
Mhm,
martyrdom, which is in reference to people who are living their dying to Christ and rising with Christ in
yeah,
the wilderness, in the
yeah,
green hills of Ireland. And so
yeah,
I think that's in part the future of Christianity that's going to be lively again. I don't mean everybody going out and living in a cave,
Yeah.
but those people that are called to do that, having a bigger role to play
Mhm.
in the future. That's what I mean.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I really like how, again, you're focusing on the Celtic saints too, because everybody likes the Celtic saints. Like that's a very ecumenical position. Because we did St. Patrick, everybody likes St. Patrick. And I still have a cough, which is really sad.
Yeah.
I got that when I was in Iona, and
Oh,
that was
another
fun.
monastic island, right?
Yeah, no, so yes, another monastic island. But again, I went to many pilgrimages in Ireland, and the island itself is just a holy island. And again, you have to remember, like with Celtic saints, and of course, when you refer to Celtic, you meaning like Ireland, Wales, Scotland, anything that's like not Roman, not Anglo-Saxon kind of people. Because once you get all the invasions and stuff like that, you start getting the blend and stuff. So this is trying before that, like what 4th century to like 9th century, you'd say, like is when the heyday of Celtic spirituality was its like own kind of like
Well,
like it's like the heyday, I would say.
there was a synod, I think, what 7th or 8th century that
Yeah,
formalized a much deeper connection to Rome, and
yeah,
you see this under Charlemagne too, and the
hmm,
whole Western European Empire. There is a much deeper alliance, not just because was partly it's because Charlemagne wanted that. Like
yeah,
he wanted a deeper alliance with Rome
hmm,
for many reasons. But you see that same thing going on in Ireland and
hmm,
Britain as well, a deeper connection with Rome. And so because it's really after that that you begin to see the Irish penance laws going into
hmm,
Roman law. So
yep,
Ireland's actually sending stuff to Rome too. It's not
hmm,
just like a one-way street.
yep. And of course, like another wild thing about Ireland, like again, I would say like Celtic spirituality, like the main things that to me make Celtic spirituality is one, this idea of creation, very much being in harmony with creation, having a creation spirituality, having creation theology that's very, in harmony with. And then one thing was also cool, you brought up wild, was like one of the images they used for the Holy Spirit was a wild goose. So being showing like, well, again, the dove is peaceful, and yeah, the spirit is peaceful, but it is unsettling. Like it will do things that you don't understand because, as Jesus said, the spirit goes wherever. You only see it when it does something. And again, they're using the wild goose from their
Mhm.
culture to explain the power and the unsettling of the Holy Spirit and what the Holy Spirit actually can do. And of course, then you have the sacramentality of the Celtics the Celtic saints, because again, like you see their prayers, you see a lot of things, like there's a prayer for almost everything, like keeping the fire, lighting the fire, like all these
Mm.
prayers, sanctifying time and space, being in tune with the seasons, like this again, creation, sacramentality, seeing the sacred in all things. And of course, another thing that's really cool is, like you said, the green martyrdom, which a lot of times meant them going out in the wilderness, and even someone took that extra step, like Saint Columba, who went to another island and was like, I'm not going to go back to Ireland, even though he probably did go back to Ireland, a couple times. But like
Mhm.
leaving, like they get in a boat. A lot of these saints and monastics got on a boat and was like, God, take us where you want us to go. And they set off into the waters, and then wherever they land, they would start a
Yeah.
monastery and a mission,
That
unless
is
there
the
was
that's
other
wild goose
Christian.
Christianity. Like
Yep.
okay, Lord, it's like hopping in your car and being like, "Okay, I know God, you've given me a mission." Now, of course,
Mhm.
this isn't for everybody. You have to get to a certain place in your spiritual life
Yeah.
before you hop in your boat or you hop in
Hmm.
your car and you say, "Lord, take me where you want me to go."
Hmm.
If it's a permanent move like that, but it
Yeah.
can be done like that even in small ways.
Hmm.
Imagine that's how you live each day. You wake up and say,
Exactly.
"Lord, send me the person you want me to talk to today." And then you're gonna see miracles happen because
Hmm.
that prayer is a very dangerous prayer.
Yep.
Uh, and it'll be wild and fun, and that's the adventure of Christianity I think a lot of people miss out on. I
Hmm.
forget about it sometimes too, I
Yep.
I go through phases in my life where I live that, and then I go through phases where I'm a dad, I'm raising kids, I'm
Hmm.
got a busy life, and then you forget about that wild side that the Holy Spirit wants to do,
Hmm.
and when I get back to it, Christianity gets a lot easier at that point. It's hard to
Yeah.
to step back into that, but it's easier once you're in it. Yeah,
Yep.
it's fun.
And And again, it's very beautiful having that complete trust in God.
Mhm.
And that's what a lot of these saints exemplify with their life. And of course, like how many times do we want to say no, I don't want to trust in God completely. I mean, that's what taking the apple was in the Garden of Eden, was we Satan just convincing us like, oh, we don't trust God. Like, do you really trust God when he said this? Do you really believe in him? Do you really believe he has the best thing out for you? Do you really love him? And
Mhm.
so, and of course, we're not going to, like, again, only a handful of us will ever be perfected in this life to have such trust and faith and love in Christ. And we'll, that, and then again, by the rest of us, by God's grace, will be perfected in purgatory and jazz, to have that level of faith and trust before we enter in full communion with him. But it's just, I just can't imagine just being like, these saints being like, okay, guys, we're going to get in a boat. We're going to get in this water, and God's going to take us somewhere, and we're going to figure this out. And God's going to help us. Um, and we're going to preach the gospel and bring the gospel to all nations. And
Mhm.
because again, Ireland was the end of the world at that point. It was the edge of the world. So again, you see a lot of apocalyptic kind of things from some of these saints too, because it's like, oh, we brought the gospels reached the end of the world. Like, what does that mean?
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
then
'cause
then
that
they
that
come.
was,
Yeah.
Jesus said he'll that's a sign,
Mhm.
that is gonna be fulfilled, at his return is the gospel reaching out to, all places.
Yeah. And so what does that mean to, like, again, but then you have all these saints going back into Europe because they got to re-evangelize and stuff like that and help out. And because again, it's like with some of these saints, it's like, oh, we landed on a place. Oh, it's already Christian. Okay, can you give us food? And we'll go back in the boat and we'll go to the next spot. But that's another thing about Irish Christianity that in Celtic Christianity. Again, I don't want to conflate Irish and Celtic because it's technically there's the Venn diagram, but um, with the Celtic thing, there's this idea of place of resurrection that's very strong that you see with these monastics. You have St. Kevin with his place, even though he didn't leave Ireland, he still went out in the wilderness and it was like, God, where am I going to build my monastery? And then um, the trees, like, basically we were like, yeah, this is where you're going to do it. Um,
It's a very Lord of the Rings kind of thing, and you think
mhm.
about, the Ents and the
Yeah,
trees and Lord of the Rings. I wonder if even Tolkien was influenced by like, the story of, like, Saint Kevin and
maybe.
some of the I mean, it's his part of the world, and
Exactly. Yeah.
they just kinda took all that in.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
Lord of the Rings has a very Celtic spirituality to it.
Yeah. Celtic, Norse,
Well, yeah, for
yeah.
sure that yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Rohan, yeah, is definitely Norse.
But but this idea of place of resurrection. So this is the place where you're going to live and work and bring about the kingdom of God in your specific place and time. And you're going to die there. And that's where you're going to get resurrected on the last day, on the judgment. Like, that's where you're going to come back up. And that's such a beautiful idea that we get from Celtic Christianity, because in America, specifically in American context, and maybe in the West now, we have this separation of place. We are not tied to our place. We are very much, we're going to go wherever we want to because we have the privilege and freedom to go anywhere we want to. Because it's like, oh, you see people changing jobs every 2 years and moving to state, and it's like they're not setting roots down. And there are people who are called to be that, but again, you see, like, again, you see Saint Benedict, who makes that part of his rule, is like, you're not going to move around because he understands that idea of place.
Mhm.
And you see a lot of the church fathers, and you see some church fathers be against pilgrimage even because they're like, Jesus in the chalice where you're getting it is the same Jesus you're getting at Jerusalem. Like, why do you need to do that? Like, it's going to be dangerous for you, both your spiritual life and your physical life. But but you still see the majority of people being like, pilgrimage is good. But
Yeah,
again,
it's more for, like,
being
what
tied to your
what
place.
the Benedictine monk in the West
Mhm.
was following a very strict rule of not going from monastery to monastery, probably because it was being abused, you know?
Yeah.
You get let's say you're a poor monk, you don't get along with people, maybe you're heretical.
Mhm.
Well, that's an easy way to just kinda, like, jump ship and go to another one. It's kinda how
Yeah.
people church shop today, and particularly in the
Exactly.
Protestant world, it's like, things didn't go well at your church, and so you're just gonna church hop from place to place,
Place.
and you can
Yeah.
never be truly held accountable,
Mhm.
to a community because you
Yep.
can just leave and find another one. So,
Exactly.
I think that was one of the reasons why that rule was created in the West. The
Yeah.
East kinda critiques that because they've kinda kept that wild side
Yeah.
to monasticism a little bit,
Mhm.
where, in the East, they like monks will, they could be, a lot of them could be hermits. Some of them are jumping from monastery to monastery. Um, and in the West, they didn't follow the same model.
Yeah, because again, you have Saint Iona, not Saint Iona, Saint Columba, Saint Patrick, and all the other saints, in Saint Kevin, like making all these monasteries, but then themselves staying in one monastery for long periods of times. Because you see some traveling in the Celtic saints, but for the most part, they're staying in their main place where they feel like God has called them to build a monastery and where their place of resurrection is, because that idea of accountability, and you need to have that balance. But at the same time, the majority of us, I feel, are called to be in a specific place in a specific time to a specific community, being accountable to that community, and to bring the kingdom to that community, and help build that kingdom up. So Ireland, land of saints and scholars. Ireland, land of rainbows. I saw a lot of rainbows.
It was Does it really rain beautiful. So much?
It rained. Okay, so apparently it was its wettest summer ever in its history. Of course. But I saw so many rainbows. I never seen so many intact rainbows. Like I saw double rainbows. Yeah. And I was like, oh, thank you, God. And I saw me and my fiance saw 2 rainbows when we were climbing up Crog Patrick, because that's where I proposed to her, because that's how much of a nerd I am.
Congratulations. Everybody watching the stream, congratulate Nikki on his new engagement betrothal.
Yeah, with my betrothal. So the main 4 pilgrimages I did in Ireland. The first pilgrimage we did was to Crog Patrick, and that's just St. Patrick Mountain. And it's tradition and legend and everything like that says that St. Patrick climbed that mountain and stayed up there for 40 days like Christ and what Moses did, and stuff like that. So he was imitating the saints and imitating Christ up there, and he was praying, fasting, and
imitating Christ, the new Adam, imitating Adam, the old Adam who had a former glory in creation that we just talked about with Saint Ephraim. See, we're weaving the details together.
Yeah, it's all connected. Yeah, it's all connected. So going back to Patrick's Mountain, so he goes up here for 40 days, fasting, praying, seeing visions, communing with God. Of course, like some legends say it, like it kind of changes, depends who's telling it. But basically, he goes up there, has communion with God, sees some angels, stuff like that. Apparently, he's told that he will be one of the judges at the end of days of all of Ireland, as God gives him that, privilege.
So you think now, as Ireland is losing its faith right now, as we speak, that he's gonna send St. Patrick back? Another St. Patrick.
So, having this fun time on the mountain. This is also where it's traditionally believed that he banished all the snakes from Ireland. So either way, all we know is that St. Patrick for sure went up the mountain and prayed. That's all we know for like many days. So it's a huge pilgrimage site. Thousands of people climb the mountain. Thousands. It is 2,500 feet up elevation, 2.5 miles. So you're going 1,000 feet every mile you climb up the mountain. And it's broken up into 3 parts. So like there's a more steep up, and then there's a flat, and then there's another steep part. And so I'm reading, I'm reading online. I'm like, oh, this seems pretty easy, and everything like that. It wasn't, if you go online and look up, because you see, oh, it's moderate or it's like very accessible and stuff. It's a lie. It's a lie. Don't listen to people. It's a lie. It is very hard, like train. So it was very difficult. I was very much in pain the whole way up, but
oh, wow.
Yeah. When 5 of us went up, and one of our friends had to stop halfway because he couldn't finish it, because it was very steep going up. And the thing is, like, tradition, like, it's a penitential thing. There's like an indulgence tied to it and stuff like that and everything like that, which is great. Don't get me wrong. But the traditional penitential thing to climb this mountain is by barefoot. And so on the last Sunday of July, like 25,000 plus people like climb that mountain barefoot, basically, like every year. It's insane. So when me and my group of friends, like all of our friends from the States, my fiance didn't know this was going to happen, by the way. She didn't know I was going to propose to her here. So managed to surprise her.
So you couldn't breathe when you were up there, huh? You're dead tired?
Yeah, I was tired. Oh gosh. I need to show you like the video and stuff, because our friends took a video, because like
this is an amazing proposal, by the way.
Oh yeah. Because also my fiance, like I said in our previous episode about St. Patrick, my fiance's confirmation saint is St. Patrick. So I got her parents' blessings and I got St. Patrick's blessings. So, but so we're driving up, we're seeing the mountains, and we're like, I hope it's, and we hope it's the smaller mountain, because the top of the St. Patrick Mountain is covered in cloud. It is engulfed in a cloud.
Oh yeah, wow.
Yeah, so we get there. Me and Marianne, my fiance, we buy walking sticks, some arch wood sticks with 3 euros, 3 pounds. Yeah, 3 pounds. No, 3 euros. We're still in Ireland because this is on west side of Ireland. This is near Galway. So we start climbing. It's hard. The last third of the mountain, like I said, is in the cloud, and it is like rock. Like you can barely tell the path because it just looks like just rocks falling down, and they made a path out of rocks. And so, yeah. So on the top of the mountain is a chapel. We couldn't get in the chapel, unfortunately. I think there was a sign that said St. Patrick's bed. So where he kind of slept during his praying, I guess. So climb it up. I'm saying prayers the whole way up, being like, God, please get me through this. When you reach the top, our friends and I celebrate in jazz, and then I propose to my fiance. So that's like the short story of that. I proposed to my fiance at the top of the mountain. And that was our, first full pilgrim. Well, no, that was our second pilgrimage, because she and I went to the Cave of the Apocalypse in June. It was cold. It was windy. We were tired. We were in pain. I offered all my pain to God during that time, being like, Lord, use this pain for something good. I did my penance, I guess. Proposed to my fiance. She said yes. And we climbed back down, and it took us like 4 or 5 hours to do all this. And it was great. Like, I was really hoping the clouds wouldn't be around, because the views was beautiful. Seeing the rainbow, seeing the field, seeing the ocean, it was just amazing. It's out of like I said, out of a fantasy book, how gorgeous the place is. Yeah, and of course there's a tradition also of carrying a stone up, for a prayer intention. And I made the joke about my stone was the stone I used to propose to my fiance. So
yeah, you're carrying the stone, the rock. Yeah.
Yep, exactly. And carrying the ring. And so she was surprised. She thought it was not going to happen till Belfast for whatever reason. She knew it was going to happen in Ireland, but she didn't know where, and I surprised her. So it was overall, it was a very good pilgrimage, very transformational on different levels. But that's
kind of glowing. Yeah. You're glowing like Adam and Eden and Moses and St. Patrick.
But it's a whole, like I said though, but that's the first pilgrimage I did. So, and St. Patrick is one of the patron saints of Ireland. So that's one of his main sites, one of his big main sites, of course, besides, the cathedral in Dublin, and the Rock of Cashel, a castle where he baptized one of the kings of Ireland at, which we also went to, which was cool. It was just, ruins of a castle and a church and stuff. Then me and Marianne went to Iona. And Iona is a small island off of Scotland. So it's an island off an island off an island.
Did St. Columba go there?
St. Columba went there, yeah. So that's where St. Columba went. And there's a myriad of reasons why St. Columba went. Some just like the earliest sources, I believe, were just he just wanted to do a green martyrdom. Just go off. He planted a bunch of monasteries in Ireland, and he wanted to spread it to the Picts, in Scotland. And of course, then there's like a copyright issue that he copyrighted, and the king was like, no, you broke copyright law. And so he kind of self-exiled himself. Or then he kind of helped start like a battle and cause a lot of people to die.
There was a copyright battle back then, huh?
Yeah. So like he was like writing, and he wanted to share this work from his mentor or whatever. And his mentor was like, no, I don't want to do that. And they brought it before the king, and the king was like, it's his work. So, but that's like later sources, I believe, that like you see this kind of like he leaving Ireland in a kind of disgraceful way. But like, we don't know. But he just left Ireland because he felt called to at least leave Ireland to build a monastery. So he goes into Iona, founds the Iona monastery. And for centuries, it is a hub of great art, and it's a mission point, like it's a mission base, and where monks are trained and sent out and start forming monasteries in Scotland and England and jazz. So like many saints are trained there, and that's where his place of resurrection is. He died there, but again, like I said, he's not buried there. He's buried in Downpatrick, according to tradition. So St. Columba had a white horse whom he loved really much, and the horse really loved. So he knew he was going to die soon. And so he was going around blessing everything on the island, his last things. And his horse comes up and just cries on him. Like he's sitting down, the horse just buries his head into St. Columba's chest and just cries. And one of his monks like, what are you doing? Some of the way. It's like, the horse loves me, man. Like, well, because this is paraphrasing, but it's like, the horse knows I'm leaving. Let him say goodbye. And again, showing that deep love and respect that animals have towards the saints and vice versa. And then
It reminds me of Gandalf and Shadowfax.
And then Saint Columba dies when he's like, it's the last, like, I think it's vigil, the one at night, the prayer service at night, and he runs to the sanctuary and collapses, and one of the monks like grabs him and tries to lift him up, and he blesses his monks one last time, and then he passes. So that's that story with that. But let's see. I have a book.
What you got? You got another book to show me?
I have many books. So this book is called the Iona Pilgrim's Manual. I got this at the Galway Cathedral, and it's written by a redemptionist, John J.O. Riordan. I pronounced that wrong, but I can send you a picture. But basically, it has like a little map of the island is small. It is like 3.5 miles wide, long, and like 1.5 miles wide. So like very easy, very beautiful, mostly just rolling fields and hills and stuff like that. And it gives you a little history of the island, but it gives you stations and prayers with it and like a little blip about it. So like it gives you like, oh, you start at station 1, the Abbey Church, and it tells you like a little history of it. And the first St. Columba built his thing on the first church like 563 AD, around that time. And of course, it got raided by the Vikings and stuff. So then there's like, one of the stations is Martyrs Bay, where a bunch of the monks got martyred. There's another beach where they got martyred, but there's currently an abbey there. It is not Catholic. It is not Orthodox. It is non-denominational, ecumenical. It's a new monastic kind of thing. And I have there.
I think I actually even heard it through, I think, in my early days.
Yeah.
When I was studying kind of like new monasticism, which was it's still happening, but like early, let's say 2007, 6, 7, 8, new monasticism, like in the Protestant world, was being talked about a lot. Families living together, living a rule together, whether that be in a neighborhood, buying a bunch of houses and living together, like in separate homes, but like all on the same street, and starting a church, or actually like having like a type of monastery. I was really big when I was in college. I almost did it. Did one of those things. Had friends that did it.
Yeah. And of course, I was also drawn to that when I was younger Protestant too. So it's like, but I have some more books that I bought from them, like Pathways for Pilgrims, Discovering the Spirituality of the Iona Community in 28 Days by Chris King. And they have their own kind of press. I forget what their press is called. The Wild Goose Publications.
Okay.
So, and then Living by the Rule. They have their website and stuff, and it is community of men and women. And it's also international community. Like, it's not just them, but like Living the Rule. So like I have the rule of the Iona community. So they call themselves the Iona community. I have their Abbey worship book too. Because so they're a lot more, I would say, progressive as a Christian group. They're very much inclusive and stuff like that. But they do like, I think 3 prayers a day. They do like a morning prayer, they do like afternoon prayer, and then they do an evening prayer. And some of them have themes and stuff like that. So more like, again, following like the divine liturgy kind of like system of things. But the church, the current abbey was built in the last century. So St. Columba's community was on the island for hundreds of years, got raided, by Vikings and stuff like that. And then Benedictine monastery was set up on there. And of course that caused some issues and tensions and stuff. And eventually the Benedictines like kind of like assumed everybody. And then the Reformation happened, and then that got closed, and then it was, left certain ruins. And in the last like century or so, it's been rebuilt, and a community has been formed there, a new community, drawing from the spirituality of, the Celtic saints, specifically St. Columba.
Okay.
So,
yeah, I recently saw an image. I've seen them in journal articles and a few other places. Somebody actually shared it on Facebook. Somebody created a map of all the monasteries throughout the United Kingdom right before the Reformation.
Yeah.
And then all of them.
It's so sad.
Being
like
closed
how much
or destroyed. It's like, you just see like hundreds just everywhere. And it makes me think, like, if that had never happened, I think the United States North America would have had a lot of monasteries in
Oh
the
yeah.
early days. Like,
Mm-hmm.
let's say even King Henry broke off and you still have Anglicanism, but
Mm-hmm.
they decided not to destroy monasticism and just kind of make it, Anglican Protestant. We still would have had a ton of monasteries, and I consider that a big loss of
Yeah.
what it means to be a Christian.
Mm-hmm.
Because the monk, those who are celibate for the kingdom of God, are there to demonstrate what it looks like to be a Christian, what it looks like to be Saint John the Baptist and Elijah, and so it's a whole type of a very important layer of what it means to be in the world, but not be of it,
Yeah.
and living within creation too, in
Mm-hmm.
harmony with it. So they're kind of like an icon, eschatological icon of what man's supposed to be, and I
Yeah.
think that's why we need monks.
Yeah. Exactly.
It's got to be the future.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And of course, like again, this island, like I said, is small, 3.5 miles like long, a mile and a half wide. So you can walk the whole island in like a day. So I was there for a day and a half, which I managed there was like 24 stations in this book. We did all 24, um, which was great. The people there are really lovely. There's only like less than 500 people who live on the island continuously. So basically, it's just the main port and then the abbey, and then the rest is just farmland. And
Mm,
so it's very interesting because there's like you have to go trespass, and I put that in quotations because trespassing in America versus the UK is completely different. They don't really care, as long as you're not hurting their sheep. So I'm walking in fields with sheep and cows and stuff like that, going to St. Columba's Bay where he landed, opening gates and stuff. Like we climbed the hill, the highest point of the island,
mhm.
and we had to open a gate to climb up the hill. It was a lot easier than Patrick, by the way. So much easier. That was like less than 500 feet tall. And of course, on top of that mountain, the hill, there's also this pagan well, like Bridget's well. So it's like referring to the goddess Bridget, like a well of youth or whatever. That was pretty cool. But at the same time, there's St. Bridget's cross there, which again, showing this like the syncretism kind of thing that's kind of happening, resurgence and stuff,
Syncretism and contrast at the same
and
time.
contrasting at the same time. So I'm like,
Yeah.
because I took it as like, oh, St. Bridget's cross, Christianizing the well. But to others, it's like, well, that's keeping in tradition with, paganism, Celtic spirituality and stuff. So it
Mhm.
depends on how you look at it. There's a mound, like there's a little hill that St. Columba, like one of the stories, one of his monk, he would go out at night and pray. And one of his monks wanted to know where he was going. And he would see him on this mound, and like he'd be surrounded by angels. And then the Columba saw him and was like, don't tell anyone until like I'm dead, And so then he tells him after death. And it's like, that's also called the Hill of Fairies too. So it's like, you get this layer upon layer of things. But like I said,
So
there's many
angels are
stations.
fairies and fairies are angels in Ireland.
Yeah. Something like that, maybe. That'll be a good conversation with one of my friends. He really likes the fairies and stuff like that, and Christianity and stuff. So it's a very beautiful place. To get there, it's really hard. So how I got there, me and Marianne flew to Glasgow, Scotland, because we wanted to check out Glasgow. So spent the day in Glasgow, went to the cathedral there, saw St. Mungo's, what's it called, tomb, what was left of it, because it was destroyed. So seeing what was left of that. Then we took a train to Oban, which is like the seafood capital of Scotland, apparently. So if you ever want seafood, go there, I guess,
Oh,
in Scotland.
I want seafood every meal. Yeah. I love seafood. If I could be a seaside monk with eating seafood every
Mhm.
day, I'd be pretty happy.
Well, Iona would be your place then, I guess.
Yeah.
So then from Oban, we took a ferry to another island, which is like a bigger island. I forget the name of the island. And then we took a bus, and the bus took like an hour, and it was one road and two-way. So like every 5 or so minutes, we would have to like pull to the side to let a car through or something like that. Then we get to the ferry on the other side of the island and take the ferry to Iona, and then you're on
Mm,
Iona. So
how fun.
it's a
That's
very
so
hard
cool.
place to get to, but it's worth it. The people there are very nice, um, and very knowledgeable and everything like that. The Abbey is beautiful too. The shrine of St. Columba is cool. They had um, the icon of St. Columba there and stuff like that. There is some Catholic presence there on the island. They have like a Catholic, I want to say church, like center kind of thing. And sometimes a priest is there. And that was a cool place to pray too. Um, and then of course there's the hermit cell, which is way off in the middle of nowhere too, which we went to. Like I said, we went to a bunch of things, and like we went to basically every side of the island and just walking. And of course, that pilgrimage aspect of walking and going to these sites and praying at these sites, because like I said, St. Columba has been there since the 6th century. And there's been Christians on that island since then. And, seeing the history and seeing how everything's built on top of each other. And St. Columba is known as being a patron saint of poets and everything like that. He has a story with an animal, if you want to hear about that story.
Well, I didn't know he was the patron saint of poets. So he's got a special place in your life.
Yeah, he's got a special place in my life. He's also, another special thing is his feast day is June 9th. And that's, for those who don't know, that's also when I asked out my girlfriend, my fiance.
Okay, gotcha.
So, sorry, my fiance, that's when she and I started, it was June 9th. Yeah. So like St. Columba has been a special saint to us. But there's a Gaelic proverb about Iona. It's like, I can't speak the Gaelic. So, but it's those who come to Iona will come not once, but 3 times. So it's a big thing. Like, you could go there physically 3 times, but like spiritually it transforms you that much. And I could see that. I saw the whole of the island and I participated as much as I could. Like, I could spend a week there and still not get everything out of it.
Sure.
And then there's a prophecy kind of thing that there's only like a couple poems that St. Columba we have left, I think, at least from what I find. It's hard finding things written by. There's a prophecy, but there's also some poetry that he wrote. Some
2 sons of Adam and 2 daughters of Eve.
One sec. I own in my heart, Columba.
All right, listeners, prepare yourselves for this prophecy I've never heard.
Yeah. So basically, he's kind of saying what Columbus said was going to happen to Iona. So basically you see this a lot, because the first line, Iona my heart, Iona my love, instead of monks' voices shall be lowing of cattle, but ere the world come to an end, Iona shall be as it was.
What does that mean?
So basically I'm thinking,
break it down, poet.
Yeah, I'll bring it down.
Poet.
but you see, and I have this little journal that says Iona my heart. So basically saying even St. Columba loved this place. Like, he has a very deep love and respect for this island that God has given to him. God has probably shown him in this prophecy that instead of the voices of monks, there's going to be the lowing of cattle. So there's going to be some disruption of the monks. The monks are going to have to leave or something like that. And the cattle is going to be farmed and stuff. But then when the world comes, Iona is going to be as it was. So in the new world, in the reconciliation of all things and the transfiguration of all the world, Iona is going to be a place of worship again. Iona is going to be a place where monks are going to be speaking again. So that's kind of that little prophecy there. So
Romans chapter 8, where creation is liberated, and in Revelation chapters 21 and 22, where heaven and earth are reunited like Eden. And so like Iona and everywhere else will be restored. I also wonder too, because, I wonder if he was predicting that it would even happen before that.
Maybe.
Since we saw the destruction of monasteries throughout the United Kingdom, of course, maybe he didn't understand his whole prophecy himself.
Maybe,
but it being those holy places being restored again before the end of the world. I mean, we're beginning to see that happen in our own lifetime.
Yep. So, which is
it's
really
the end of the world, everybody knows. So.
Yeah. So some fun little tidbits there. They also have their own whiskey and mead too. They don't make it on the island. A local distillery makes their stuff, and it's Iona mead, Iona whiskey. But again, a very great place. Definitely should go there if you can.
Well, I'm going to have you lead the trip, man. So
okay.
We'll do a barrel-aged faith pilgrimage.
Yeah, I mean, a barrel-aged faith pilgrimage would be really cool. So that was the second pilgrimage in Ireland in chronological order, because Glendalough was the last one. So we started last and kind of working our way back. The next one was Kildare. And Kildare is when St. Bridget built her monastery. And she's the last of the patron saints. She's also a patron saint of Ireland, like I said, but also a patron saint of poets as well. And she, how it's been described is that St. Patrick is the patron of this, patron of the church, kind of jazz, and St. Bridget is the saint of the people. So kind of seeing that dichotomy there, because St. Patrick's, representing more like the order, the hierarchy, and St. Bridget's more representing the wildness of and the people and and stuff like that.
Yeah, yeah, you see that sometimes when saints are coupled together, uh, where one is bringing more of the order and the other has the wild side, or it's complementary. Yeah.
Yeah, and then you have St. Columba, who I think is the middle child, honestly, who everyone forgets about. So even though he's done great things, but so Kildare means like cell of the oak. So she built, under oak tree. Oak is a big thing to her. Oak seeds, like the acorns and stuff like that. So the town of Kildare, it's a quaint little city. It's take a train out of Dublin. You get there. You could do it in a day. It's easily do a day trip. So like the main things you see are like the cathedral, and the cathedral is not Catholic. It's Church of England, Church of Ireland, so Anglican. But that's where her monastery was built. And on that site, there's a graveyard around it, obviously, but there's also the fire temple, because again, this is where
Did you just say that's where the fire temple was?
Yeah, fire temple.
Wow, what's a fire temple?
So again, this is like I was talking about, like the merging
Pagan
of
days?
Yeah, pagan days with Christianity. So Bridget the goddess, there was the eternal fire of Bridget the goddess. So again, this site has been a place of worship and Celtics and Druids and stuff
Did
like
they
that
do
for
any human
centuries.
sacrifice there?
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know, actually.
I was just curious, because sometimes in some places they did, sometimes they didn't.
I don't know, but all I know for sure, they kept this eternal fire going, and that kind of represented, the presence of the goddess. But then when St. Bridget came, they kind of co-opted that, and so her monastery kept that fire going, and it became the light of Christ, basically. This
Very
eternal
cool.
fire. And so that fire kept going till the 16th, 17th century, until the Reformation came, I think. And the bishop was like,
they just kept the fire stoked.
Huh? Yeah, they kept the fire stoked. And yeah, and of course this book that I shared has prayers with it. Yeah, so St. Bridget's Cathedral, there's the High Cross, the Round Tower, St. Bridget's Fire Temple, St. Bridget's Parish Church, which is actually a Catholic parish, and they have a cool icon, which I really need to share you, because there's an icon of Bridget. It's a recent icon, Eastern kind of style, but there's a lot going on with it because it has a lot of images from St. Bridget's life. You can buy like a paper stock of the icon at the center. And so you go to the Solis Bride Center, and they have the eternal fire there. It's not the original, because like I said, it got put out, but they relit it like in the 1990s, because they do a lot of things about Bridget is that she's associated with peace, with nature and stuff like that. And then there's the main well where both of her St. Bridget as well, but this is the main where they think that she would be at. She would be with her cows. People, dip things into the well, like, cloths, and tie it on trees and stuff. Kind of, again, like that pagan thing being reclaimed and stuff. People tied rosaries up there and stuff. Again, miracles are associated with this place. And again, a bunch of prayers and stuff like that. But of course, St. Bridget has a lot of stories too, as well, like one with the tamed wolf or the tamed fox kind of thing. And there's a story how she got the land to build her monastery, which is pretty cool. There's, again, some stories about her almost being sold off to be a slave.
Oh,
so there's a lot of stuff. And then,
the way that she got the land for her monastery was related to a cloak, right?
Yeah, it was her mantle. Yeah, so
yeah, her mantle. So it was like, she was asking for land, and I think maybe the king or someone said, you can have as much as your cloak will cover.
Yep.
Which was really an insult to her, because a cloak's not all that big. And then somehow it magically grew and
miraculously.
Yeah.
Not sorry, magically, miraculously.
Miraculously, not magically. Sorry, need to say this correctly. God grew her cloak to be acres.
Yeah. And
acreage.
Acreage, yeah.
Yeah.
And it's still kind of called like Bridget's pastures, and stuff, like some of the places. And then, it was a big place, and it was a very, in the abbot there, the abbotess there had a high place of respect, because she was the successor of St. Bridget. And of course, there's a legend that the bishop accidentally consecrated her as a bishop, because the wind moved thing and stuff like that. But also, the reason why this book was republished was because people were demanding it to be republished, but also because St. Bridget's Day was made a national holiday like this year.
Oh, wow.
And then I think the anniversary, I think, of St. Bridget's life, her death, 1500 years in 2024. So this upcoming year is 1,500 years since her death. So
it's a big year,
so big year, big year. Bridget Sisters is like, we are bringing the light of Christ, you know, that was carried by Saint Bridget. So like, it's her flavor stuff. So again, emphasis on creation, emphasis on peace, because, and for the least of these,
obviously this interview is a big pitch to go to Ireland, do some pilgrimages, and also for people, even if you can't, like, study the saints of Ireland.
Oh yeah.
And imitate their footsteps, and you'll find your faith, you know, maybe you'll start finding the wild goose a little bit more in your life.
My final thoughts on the Celtic saints is, again, like any saint from any time period of Christianity, they emphasize certain aspects of the deposit of faith, of Christ's life. And the Celtic saints, I feel like, are the ones that will lead us into a new idea of how the church should be stewards in the world. Being stewards is bringing the reconciliation of Christ, not just to human beings, but to the world. And again, the primary focus is human beings, obviously, but the thing is like, we are called to bring all of creation to the foot of God. And so we need to offer everything back to God. Again, going back to what our mission of Adam is. And I feel like the Celtic saints are the blueprints for that, because of how they internalized and how they incarnated Christ in their context. And so we need to follow their examples of that.
Well, Nikki, thank you so much for coming on Barrel Age Faith. Always fun having you on. We got to have you on a lot more.
Thanks for having me always, Kyle. I love being on here.
All right, guys, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, love this video, share it with others. Continue keeping Nikki in your prayers, and congratulations on your engagement.
Thank you. Pray for us as we get all that logistics figured out.
Yep. St. Patrick and Bridget, pray for us. St. Kevin.
St. Columba.
Yeah, there you go.
Thanks, St. Kevin.
All right. You guys have a great day. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.